your phones for the spectacular event that is forthcoming. You should do that too.
Yeah. I'm on it.
It's a BlackBerry, so that was a Google sort of Android joke there. So, yeah.
I said nice.
Have I not given you enough Androids?
You've given me wonderful Androids in the past.
You can still have them. You want a Nexus 10? You know, I can. You know, I've got one. Can we? I'll have one brought over.
Let me talk about the advantages of the BlackBerry when it comes to social media. Also, the flicking things around with your thumb. I actually like
it's
that.
Flicky.
It's
yeah.
flicky. It's flicky. I like that.
As you know, Neil came up from Los Angeles. Was your last stop?
It was. Last night, we finished. I say we, because there's a well-oiled machine on either side of me, pushing books on one side and putting pens in and out of my hands in the other. And we wrapped at about 2:45 in the morning.
Wow. Yeah.
And
so is that in Los Angeles time zone? It's a little different there. So.
How far away are you?
Me personally? No. Okay. So long bus trip, magical through the Coalinga's smell. Or did you take 101?
Slept. I don't know where the bus
good.
drivers. There are two of them. Their names are Charlie and Paul.
Oh, huh.
And they somehow you get in the bus, you fall asleep, you wake up in the next place.
It's like teleportation.
It's magic.
Or yeah.
I think they just
Or
roll
ambient.
the world under the bus wheels while the bus stays completely
Maybe the bus
still.
stays the same.
Exactly.
It stays, everything changes around it. So I'm going to let you do your reading, and then we'll take.
Tell them who
questions.
I am. They don't know.
Oh,
They're all sitting here going, "Who is this person? Why are we doing this?"
I'm sorry. I'd like to introduce Dan Brown. He. Well, I was told the #1 New York Times bestselling author would be on stage, and I just assumed. Oh no, it's you this week, right? Yeah. Okay. So congratulations. It's you, Miss Ivanovich. Yes. No. It's Neil Gaiman, as you know. Not really Janet Ivanovich.
Half the dozen people.
Or the one who does the Z as in zebra crime novels. She's wrapping it up too. But I'm sure she'll be #1 at some point, right? The not Suki Stackhouse, but the other one.
They're dying here, Chris.
Yeah.
They're dying on stage.
They're not here to listen to me. They're here to listen to you. So we should let you. You had something you wanted to read from.
I have a couple of things I want to read from.
Okay.
I'm going to do. I have a plan, a secret sort of weird plan. Plan. I'll do a little reading.
Okay.
And then last time I came in and did a Google talk, and the time I came in before that, I actually got up and just burbled for a long time and then did questions. Let us assume no burblage. We will go straight to questions. Yeah. There's a lot of you. We'll do a bunch of questions, and then I will read something else that won't be out for a while. So you get a sort of sneak googly preview. So that's the plan.
Okay.
Okay.
You're being recorded. You're okay with that?
What?
Because I don't want to ruin the surprise of a book.
Actually, the last time I did one of these, I was
a younger man,
younger, significantly more beautiful, definitely less grey, and in a terribly weird mood because as I was coming in through that door, I got the email saying your cat just bit a kid and is going to have to be put down. I was like, no, my cat. And
I didn't think a puma was a good choice for a domestic animal.
Just large, black, and evil. And actually, having 9 lives, he escaped that. That doom. So it's nice to be here at Google, in the same place, without worrying about cat death. Hello.
So.
Go and sit down or something.
Yeah, I'm going to get out of the way. And.
Right, so for any of you who do not know who I am, my name is Neil Gaiman. I'm a writer. I started out writing comics. Actually, no, I started before that. I was a journalist, and then I wrote comic books, back when they were still comic books, before we called them graphic novels. And then I started writing books, and somewhere in there I made some television and some films and children's books. Probably the most fun I've had on this signing tour that I'm on so far, which is my last signing tour, is counting the number of licensed as opposed to unlicensed Doctor Who t-shirts. It's currently running at 4,006. I was amazed to see a licensed t-shirt last night in Los Angeles. So I wrote a couple of episodes of Doctor Who, and most recently I wrote a novel accidentally. And that's this. And it's called The Ocean at the End of the Lane. And right now it's at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. And it's getting me the best reviews of my life, which has not been a life, entirely devoid of good reviews. But I've never seen anything like this. And the book is completely and utterly accidental. It began about 18 months ago when my wife, Amanda, who is a musician and performer, went off to Melbourne, Australia to make an album. And I missed her. And I discovered that if you have a wife who's making an album, she doesn't have much attention for anything else in the world. It's just sort of, I would get a daily text saying, I love you, making an album. And as far as she was concerned, that was it. She was doing her duty. And as far as I was concerned, it was like, I miss you. Where did you go? I had a wife. I had a girlfriend before that. I had a fiancé before that. Before that, I had a girlfriend. And now I have somebody making an album. And I thought, right, I will write her something. And the idea of essentially sort of sending her a short story was one that seemed like a really good idea. And so I took a few. She's not actually. It may seem strange because I am probably best known as a writer of the fantastic, but my wife doesn't really like fantasy very much. So I thought, well, okay, I can dial down the fantasy, and I'll put in things she likes, and she likes me. So I'll put some me in there. And she likes honesty. And she likes feelings. And I don't normally do feelings because I'm male. And English. A killer combination. But I thought, okay, I'll do a short story, and it'll have that stuff. And I'll set it. It won't quite be my family, and it won't quite be, it won't actually be autobiographical, but the viewpoint character is going to be very much me, and I will have some fun with this, and I'll write her a short story. And after a few weeks, I went, I'm really not writing a short story here. I'm probably writing a novelette. They're about sort of 10,000 to 18,000 words, maybe 10,000 to 14,000 words, something like that. And then I thought, okay, well, a week or so later, I'm obviously writing a novella. And I wrote an email to my editors. And I said, I'm writing a novella. Don't really know what we'll do with it, but there is a novella happening. And my plan had originally been to finish the thing and send it to Amanda in Melbourne. But she finished making her album. And she came back to America, and she went to Dallas to mix the album. So I went to Dallas to be with her. And every day she'd mix her album. And every day I would go to a local coffee shop, and I would finish. I finished writing my book on the first day, and then I started typing. And I typed it out, and every night I'd read it to her. And every morning I'd say, okay, where do you remember up to before you fell asleep? And she'd tell me. And I'd read it again. And when I finished, I did a word count. because technology allows you to do that these days very simply. And sent a very surprised email slightly apologetic email to my editors on each side of the Atlantic, saying I appear to have accidentally written a novel. I'm very sorry. And I'd never written a novel that hadn't been planned before. I'd always sort of known that I was writing something, and I knew that it was happening. And here I was with an extra book. And didn't actually think that it was anything other than this weird kind of very personal book. I'd written things over the years, mostly short stories, a few graphic novels. Violent Cases, Mr. Punch were both graphic novels, a few short stories, which would all be these kind of peculiar, not really autobiographical stories, but using big, chunky autobiographical elements. Generally speaking, they got nice critical response and sank without trace. Were never really heard of again. And suddenly I'd written something, and I'd send it out to friends to read and give me their reactions, and they'd email back saying, it's the best thing you've written, and I cried. And I go, okay, it must be the feelings. So I'm going to read you just a little bit of this, because I know we have limited time, and Chris and I took up most of it, doing possibly the worst comedy routine ever seen in this entire building. So, nobody came to my 7th birthday party. There was a table laid with jellies and trifles, with a party hat beside each place, and a birthday cake with 7 candles on it in the center of the table. The cake had a book drawn on it, in icing. My mother, who had organized the party, told me that the lady at the bakery said they'd never put a book on a birthday cake before, and that mostly for boys it was footballs or spaceships. I was their first book. When it became obvious that nobody was coming, my mother lit the 7 candles on the cake, and I blew them out. I ate a slice of the cake, as did my little sister and one of her friends, both of them attending the party as observers, not participants, before they fled, giggling, to the garden. Party games had been prepared by my mother, but because nobody was there, not even my sister, none of the party games were played, and I unwrapped the newspaper around the pass-the-parcel gift myself, revealing a blue plastic Batman figure. I was sad that nobody had come to my party, but happy that I had a Batman figure. And there was a birthday present waiting to be read, a box set of the Narnia books, which I took upstairs. I lay on the bed and lost myself in the stories. I liked that. Books were safer than other people, anyway. My parents had also given me a Best of Gilbert and Sullivan LP to add to the 2 that I already had. I'd loved Gilbert and Sullivan since I was 3, when my father's youngest sister, my aunt, took me to see Iolanthe, a play filled with lords and fairies. I found the existence and nature of the fairies easier to understand than that of the lords. My aunt had died soon after, of pneumonia, in the hospital. That evening, my father arrived home from work, and he brought a cardboard box with him. In the cardboard box was a soft-haired black kitten of uncertain gender, whom I immediately named Fluffy, and which I loved utterly and wholeheartedly. Fluffy slept on my bed at night. I talked to it sometimes when my little sister was not around, half expecting it to answer in a human tongue. It never did. I did not mind. The kitten was affectionate and interested, and a good companion for someone whose 7th birthday party had consisted of a table with iced biscuits and a blancmange and cake, and 15 folding chairs. I do not remember ever asking any of the other children in my class at school why they'd not come to my party. I did not need to ask them. They were not my friends, after all. They were just the people I went to school with. I made friends slowly when I made them. I had books, and now I had my kitten. We would be Dick Whittington and his cat, I knew, or if Fluffy proved particularly intelligent, we would be the miller's son and Puss in Boots. The kitten slept on my pillow, and it even waited for me to come home from school, sitting on the driveway in front of my house by the fence, until a month later, it was run over by the taxi that brought the opal miner to stay at my house. I was not there when it happened. I got home from school that day, and my kitten was not waiting to meet me. In the kitchen was a tall, rangy man with tanned skin and a checked shirt. He was drinking coffee at the kitchen table. I could smell it. In those days, all coffee was instant coffee, a bitter dark brown powder that came out of a jar. "I'm afraid I had a little accident arriving here," he told me cheerfully, "but not to worry." His accent was clipped, unfamiliar. It was the first South African accent I'd heard. He, too, had a cardboard box on the table in front of him. "The black kitten, was he yours?" he asked. "It's called Fluffy," I said. "Yeah, like I said, accident coming here. Not to worry, disposed of the corpse. Don't have to trouble yourself. Dealt with the matter. Open the box." "What?" He pointed to the box. "Open it," he said. The opal miner was a tall man. He wore jeans and checked shirts every time I saw him except the last. He had a thick chain of pale gold around his neck. That was gone the last time I saw him, too. I did not want to open his box. I wanted to go off on my own. I wanted to cry for my kitten, but I could not do that if anyone else was there and watching me. I wanted to mourn. I wanted to bury my friend at the bottom of the garden, past the green grass fairy ring into the rhododendron bush cave, back past the heap of grass cuttings where nobody ever went but me. The box moved. "Bought it for you," said the man. "Always pay my debts." I reached out, lifted the top flap of the box, wondering if this was a joke, if my kitten would be in there. Instead, a ginger face stared up at me truculently. The opal miner took the cat out of the box. He was a huge, ginger-striped tomcat missing half an ear. He glared at me angrily. This cat had not liked being put in a box. He was not used to boxes. I reached out to stroke his head, feeling unfaithful to the memory of my kitten, but he pulled back so I could not touch him, and he hissed at me, then stalked off to a far corner of the room where he sat and looked and hated. "There you go, cat for a cat," said the opal miner, and he ruffled my hair with his leathery hand. Then he walked out into the hall, leaving me in the kitchen with the cat that was not my kitten. The man put his head back through the door. "He's called Monster," he said. It felt like a bad joke. I propped open the kitchen door so the cat could get out. Then I went up to the bedroom and lay on my bed and cried for dead Fluffy. When my parents got home that evening, I do not think my kitten was even mentioned.
So now you wanted to take some questions, yeah?
Yeah, why not?
So I'm going to quote Tom
Actually, let me
Stoppard.
before we do.
Okay.
I would say after that, things get much stranger. There we go. Now,
I'm going to quote Tom Stoppard, quoting Neil Gaiman, with some liberties. A question is a short interrogative that can be answered by its victim. Although he didn't say victim. The point is, often people will give speeches. Here at
nobody
Google.
at Google would do that.
Well, this is what
Surely.
I told him. So if you have a question, there's a microphone right there. Feel free to use it. I can't believe there's no question. All right, so here we go.
Here we go.
All right, now I'm going to fade away.
Who was that man? Where did he come from? Where has he gone? Hello.
Hi. So I'm just curious if there are any sort of random moments from your childhood that just sort of have stuck with you all your life, that sort of pervade everything you write.
You know, there really aren't. I mean, strangely, the driving force, although I was, absolutely willing to pillage and ransack my childhood mostly for moments of corroborative detail. You know, the process of writing a novel, the process of writing fiction is really the same process that you use to convince a teacher that a dog really did eat your homework. And you need to get the color of the dog right and stuff. So it's for corroborative detail, I would absolutely go and raid and pillage my childhood. But the story itself actually began much more with fictional things from my childhood. One of the things that drives the book is a family called the Hempstocks, who are as far as we can tell, pretty much immortal, and have been living in a farm at the end of my lane for thousands upon thousands of years, if not millions. I mean, the youngest of them, who is 11, but has obviously been 11 for a very, very, very long time, claims that, the duck pond in her garden is actually the ocean, and they came across that ocean from the old country. And her mother says that she's wrong, and actually the old country sank. And then old Mrs. Hempstock, who claims to be able to remember the Big Bang, says they're both wrong, and actually the old country blew up. So.
When you were writing Sandman, did you have a real view of the overall story structure and where the plot was going from the beginning, or did it really evolve substantially over time?
When I was doing Sandman, I had an idea of a shape from the very beginning, but I didn't actually think I was going to be allowed to do that shape. What I thought was going to happen, because in those days, as a sort of weird matter of honor from comics companies, they tended to do 12 issues, a year's run of a comic, and then cancel it if it wasn't really selling anything. And I expected that what I was doing here was going to be a minor critical hit and a major commercial disaster. So I plotted an 8-issue storyline, because I knew that at issue 8 is when they'd phone you up and say, oh, okay, well, you're not selling anything and we're canceling it, and you've got to wrap it up, and we're going to 12 issues and then we're done. So I thought, okay, it'll be 8 issues, and then I'll do 4 short stories and we'll be done. And even though I sort of sowed the seeds for stuff that I planned to do if it kept going, that was what I thought was going to happen. Except by issue 8, it was obvious that we were selling more than anything like that had ever sold. We weren't actually selling sort of, X-Men or Batman or Superman numbers or anything, but we were outselling any comparable for mature readers thing. And at that point, I actually went, okay, now if I do this, I can do this thing. And I took the plot, was pretty sure that by issue 40, it would all be done, and went off and did it. And of course, it all took twice as long as I thought, and I wound up. After a while, I was saying, well, it'll probably wrap up at issue 50, and then issue 60. And then I started saying, if I ever get to issue 75, I'll be surprised. And then I managed to finish it at episode 75. And I knew, it's not that I knew everything, but I knew the shape of the story. And I also knew, because you're writing serial fiction, you don't have to know everything. You have to have room for happy accidents. You have to have room to do something and then go, oh my gosh, that character's great, and bring them back. You have to have room for all of that kind of thing. So there was a lot of that.
Hi, my name is Corey. I work at the Google Children's Center. And one of the things that I believe we at the Google Children's Center and you have in common is just this great, very intense respect for children and their perspective. So I've read and I've watched videos of you talking about respect for young children and how you write for children and adults. And I was just wondering, can you talk a little bit about how do you know, as you're writing a story, is this going to be for children? Is this going to be for adults?
Mostly, I mean, mostly, I was in China a few years ago, and I was talking to my Chinese publisher, and I said, why is it that none of my picture books are in print in simple Chinese on the mainland? My picture books are all in print from Taiwan and in Hong Kong, but nothing on the mainland. And they said, well, it's because they have they show a lack of respect for the family unit on the part of the children, and a lack of respect for authority. And children question authority in them, and they do bad things and they are not punished. And I thought, okay. So then it became a point of honor for me that I had to do a story in which all of those things happened that would get published in mainland China. And I decided I would write a book about a baby panda who sneezed. So I did a book called Tuesday. And at that point, you know you're writing for children. You also know that whenever you're writing for children, you're writing for adults. And you're writing for adults that if a kid likes a book, if a little kid likes a book, it's not that you're going to have to read that book once a week. You may have to read that book 4 times a night for 8 months or a year. There are books that I read my kids that are imprinted on the back of my head. There was one called Catch the Red Bus about a father bear taking his family with various colored modes of transportation to the seaside, which it's not great literature. I could recite it all still to this day. So, you're always aware of the adult readership. Sometimes you're writing things for kids. What I try and do is write for me if I'm writing for kids. And just sort of go, what did I like when I was that age? Not even what did I like, trying to look back at it, but what is the 7-year-old inside me like? What is the 9-year-old? What is the 11-year-old like? And that kind of works, treating things with that kind of respect. I just did a book called, which I'll try and do a reading of when we get to the end of this. I'll do a little reading, called Fortunately the Milk, which is ostensibly a kid's book, but it's probably the funniest thing and the silliest thing I've ever written. And that I knew it was for kids, but was absolutely happily and joyfully throwing in jokes and bits that were simply for adults, and going, I don't really care. Adults can go and buy a version with a respectable cover or something. Next question.
Hey. So in American Gods and The Sandman, you have this whole idea of gods being just like people who walk among us, who just have normal lives. I think that's really cool. I was just wondering, how did that idea start up in your head?
I remember the exact moment that the plot for American Gods came together, which was slightly different to Sandman. In Sandman, I just loved the idea that if I was going to do a story about an anthropomorphic incarnation of the idea of dreaming, that he'd look human, because it's a comic and he has to look like something. And so at that point, when you're bringing gods on, mostly in Sandman, I kept my gods sort of off in cool, gaudy places, except for the few that had retired. One was working as a travel agent in there, and he definitely retired. In American Gods, it came from another sort of thing. It came from me flying to Iceland, having a stopover in Iceland, getting in really early in the morning, getting no sleep on the plane, but going, I'll just keep going until it gets dark. And it was July the 3rd. I love the fact that you guys have seen where this plan goes wrong way before I did. And what actually happened in Iceland was at about 3 o'clock in the morning, it got a little bit overcast for about half an hour, and then the sun was out, and my body clock was just going, I don't know what's going on, I'm just going. So at 1 o'clock the following day, I'm wandering the streets of Reykjavik, and the world has gone flat. Everything is flat, everything is weird, and nothing is open, except for a tourist office. So I wander into the tourist office, because there's nothing else in Reykjavik on that Sunday, and I see the travels of Leif Erikson laid out on a tabletop diorama. And I look at them, and I think, that's really interesting. And then I thought, I wonder if they brought their gods with them. And suddenly it was like everything was there. I thought, well, obviously they did. And then they died out. And then, having died out, the gods would be just sort of hanging around, and now they'd be eking out a living on the edge of things, pumping gas and doing minor scams. And, you know, we have these sad, lonely, blue-collar gods, and I can say everything I want to say about the peculiar American immigrant experience, which was one that I was going through. I mean, having been here for 8 years and going, you know, it's nothing like the movies. It seems to be a real place with all sorts of quirks that are not getting documented. So that was the driving point for that.
In the ocean at the end of the lane, and hopefully I can keep this spoiler free, after the first cut and stitch, the narrator says he wants to remember, and then he's still him. But at the end of the book, he doesn't remember anything that occurred at the farm. And I was hoping you could explain your decision to make that so.
God, not without completely spoilering the entire book, not only for everyone here at Google, but given that this will go up onto the web, for everybody in the whole world for all time. Sidle over to me at the end, and we'll do 2 minutes. But you know, it is a book in which various strange things are done with memory, and it is, as my friend Terry Pratchett sometimes uses to describe things, it is a very quantum sort of a book. I was actually pleased. The New York Times just reviewed it, and they did actually observe something that I thought when I was writing it, which is it's probably not science fiction, except it's science fiction in the Arthur C. Clarkean sense of any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So you've got a kid who is seeing things as magic that probably actually aren't.
You've spoken about possibly revisiting London Below at some point. Any plans?
So did anyone here catch the BBC adaptation, the radio adaptation of Neverwhere recently? A couple of hands going up. Wasn't it good? A couple of hands get waved enthusiastically. So the BBC Radio 4 did an adaptation of Neverwhere, The World of London Below, with people like Benedict Cumberbatch and James McAvoy, Sir Christopher Lee, all these amazing actors, Anthony Stewart Head, Natalie Dormer, fantastic cast. Bernard Cribbins, which meant a lot to me. And I loved listening to it. I got so enthused. I went, I miss this place. And I'd been asked for a short story by George R.R. Martin and Gardner Dozois for an anthology they were putting together called Rogues. So I sat down and I wrote my first piece of Neverwhere fiction in 15 years. And it's a very long short story. I think probably it's technically a novelette called How the Marquis Got His Coat Back. And it'll be published, I guess, sometime in 2014. And you get to meet, it's fun. I get to do stuff that have been in my head about the Neverwhere world for a long time and had never actually been written. So you get to meet the shepherds of Shepherd's Bush and the elephant of Elephant and Castle. So, yes, more coming. And then one day I will probably do the other Neverwhere novel that I've been meaning to do, which is called The Seven Sisters. I'm just a really lousy writer of sequels. I always mean to. It is not... People say Gaiman does not write sequels, as if there is a moral imperative there. I will not revisit stuff. I'm not. I always mean to. I am just somebody who... if, on the one hand, I have the option of doing something that I've done before, know how to do, that people liked, and that people are waiting for, and that a publisher would pay me a lot of money to do, and on the other hand, I'd have something that I have no idea how to do and no idea if people will like or not, I will tend to go off on this hand. From a kind of, ooh, shiny kind of level. That's where I go. So I always mean to. Everything in my head, by the time I finished it, I know where I'm going to go next with it. Not everything. There is no Coraline 2 in my head, but most things. Neverwhere, there's more. Stardust, there's more. American Gods, there's more. I'm just rubbish at ever getting to them. I go and do different things instead.
So do you have any advice for someone who would like to start doing creative writing but has no idea where to start whatsoever?
Depends. Are you the kind of person who, do you read a lot?
I read a lot, yes, and I write snarky emails, but that's about it. I've been told they're very good.
I mean, when you say creative writing, do you want to write fiction? Do you want to write humorous essays? Do you want to? There's an awful
fiction, I would think.
You want to do stories?
Yes.
Okay. So my advice is start writing stories.
Just like do it.
Really, it's almost as simple as that. It's start writing. So pick a style, pick a theme. Look at the kind of, you are not expected straight out of the hat to be a brave and original voice producing fine and wonderful fiction. It's much more like the first pancake on the griddle, which is going to be this weird black messy thing that you will either give to your dog or to a child. Trying to convince them, yeah, it's nice. It's you write, you finish things, you start the next thing, you write that, you finish it. Somewhere in there, you get reasonably good. And
give these to people, or do you just?
Yeah,
Okay.
The point I always found that I would always learn more about what I'd done the moment I saw it in print, or the moment, these days, probably the moment you'd see things up on the web. But yeah, show them to people. But the most important thing when you're just starting out is write the next one. Okay. Assume that you have, 1 million words inside you that are absolute rubbish, and you need to get them out before you get to the good ones. And if you get there early, that's great. That's really my biggest advice.
All right, thank you.
Read everything you can. Read outside your comfort zone and write a lot.
So one of the things that I've noticed, I've been following you since Sandman, is that you've definitely tried lots of different mediums and different media types. I've wondered if you've ever thought about going into any of the interactive media types, like video games or anything like that, with your writing.
Back in the 90s, I had about sort of 4 excursions into the world of video games and computer games and creating. There was a Sandman game that was meant to be really cool and worked on that for a long time. There were several others. And what would happen is I would put in a lot of work on these things. And normally contracts would get signed in there. And somewhere between contract signing and the first check being cut, I would get a sad phone call explaining that they were now going out of business. And it was lovely working with me. There was one company who actually said, okay, they're coming in to shut us down this afternoon. I have the notebook computer that we were going to send you on my desk. I'm putting it in a FedEx envelope with your name on it, and then I'm losing the FedEx slip. You didn't get it from me. And they were gone that afternoon. But I went, well, at least this time I got a computer out of it. That's kind of cool. So somewhere by the end of the 90s, that was sort of went from 93 through about 99. And I thought, I cannot be responsible for somehow Jonah-like destroying any more of these nice startups or these otherwise apparently healthy companies. They show me all the stuff they've done. I go, this is great. And then they start with me and they lie on their back and put their legs in the air and move no more. Very recently, I've started toying with and playing with and getting a little bit involved in the sort of dipping my toe in kind of territory. Again, very nervously, just going, well, I like you people. Why would I want to drive you out of business? But we'll see if enough time has passed. Maybe things will change.
Hello, my name is Leela, and when things don't go so well for me, I try to make good art. And me and my wife really, really enjoy your work, and I know that your wife was the inspiration behind this book, as you've mentioned before. And I really, really enjoy your wife's work as well. She's an amazing singer, an amazing composer, and I was wondering, has she ever written any songs about you? And if she has, what are they called?
It is a bone of occasional contention between us at this point that the song that I actually show up in as me the most and for the longest is a humorous song, but true, by my wife about how much she hates Vegemite.
Mine hates vegetables.
She also hates Marmite, which it's this English yeast-based spread, very salty, that you can spread on things, and nobody except the English and Australians like, and the Australians hate Marmite, and the English don't really. Yeah, are they different? You just try getting into Australia now. Not only are they different, but I discovered through extensive Googling at one point when I got interested that. Googling capital G, obviously, and whatever TMs and copyright things need. Through extensive Googling, that New Zealand Marmite is sugary and sweet, and it's a completely different, while they have the name Marmite, it's actually nothing like English Marmite. But she wrote this song, which begins with this whole thing about how much she loves me, and then goes rapidly into why I eat Vegemite, and will put this evil, cancerous stuff on my bread, and it's a heartbreaking song for me. For everybody else, they just think it's really funny, and I'm going, no, I love you. Why this song? So that I think is the only song that I actually really get to crop up in is me, and. She had a very bad experience with Marmite as a small girl when their English neighbors were babysitting, and the neighbor kid got a large spoon of Marmite and told her it was chocolate spread. Oh. And so her first experience with Marmite was every bit as bad as my first experience with wasabi, which is another story for another day.
I actually thought wasabi was avocado, so I popped the whole thing in my mouth.
Ditto.
I understand.
Thank you. And there is a moment where you are suddenly staring out of your nostrils.
Yeah.
How this is physically possible, I don't know, but you are gazing on the naked, screaming face of God. And in my case, of course, I was at an incredibly important dinner with incredibly important people, had just done this thing, and then spent the longest 2 minutes of my life waiting for the other people at the dinner all to look the other way so I could get it out of my mouth and into a napkin. Yes, let's do one more question,
right,
and then I'm going to read a little bit more to you.
What are your feelings or thoughts about patents? The reason I ask is there's... two ladies recently, or I don't know how recently, came out with like an inflatable helmet, bike helmet. And every time I talk to somebody about it, they talk about, oh yeah, Neil Gaiman had that idea in Snow Crash.
That was actually Neil Stephenson. It's the other Neil. There's two of us. It's okay. I love it when that happens. He's the other Neil. He is the bald-bearded Neil who spells it with an A.
Less hair.
He has less hair up there, more hair down there. And the best thing about Neil Stephenson is we have a photograph of the two of us with Neil Armstrong as forming the perfect trifecta of Neils. I will throw in one bonus question. Person in red, come forward.
A palate cleanser. Yeah.
So there is obviously a huge mythological component in your, not a component, a oeuvre in your work, and especially Hindu mythology as well, which I was very surprised to find. What inspires you to include so much myth and in all of your work?
I don't have, the question is what inspires me to put so much myth into my work. I wish I had an origin story. I really do. I would say, well, when I was 4 years old, I was bitten by a radioactive myth. And people go, that was it. And I don't. I do know that when I was about 6 years old, I stumbled upon a copy of Roger Lancelin Green's Tales of the Norsemen and just loved all of the stories of Thor and Odin and Loki and the giants, and I just thought these are fantastic. And I saved up my own pocket money, and I went out and I bought, there was another book by him, Myths and Legends of Ancient Egypt, and I went and bought that, and just thought, this stuff is amazing. This is so cool. This is the best stuff. So wherever I could after that, I would read myth. I discovered very rapidly that you actually get the coolest stuff. And this was hugely important to me when I was a kid, and started realizing that in the books of myths they told for kids, they took out the sex and the violence and the really weird bits. But if you went into the adult section and read the books on myths, you could get the completely brain-mashing stuff. So I would absolutely do that. But you know, I love mythologies, and I genuinely love building them. I love thinking about them. I love creating them, and I love playing with them. And they tend to be very equal for me. One of the reasons I think why I had so much fun, and have had so much fun writing my episodes of Doctor Who, is, you know, that was the first mythology I ever really encountered. I was 3 years old and I discovered the Daleks, and you know, by the time I was 5, I knew what TARDIS stood for, and I got my dad to buy me a copy of Dalek World on Victoria Station, and it was this amazing sort of hardback, large format book with comics and articles about Daleks, and I learned all this stuff. I knew the history of Skaro. I learned that measles was a Dalek disease. I discovered that Daleks cannot see the color red, which worried me because there are red Daleks. And I would worry about what they could see. You know, oh my God, that was weird. Just some bumps went past. And it's only funny if you like Doctor Who. Otherwise, you can sit there going, I have no idea what he's talking about. But, you know, I love mythologies, and I love building them. So for me, it's part of the fun. And thank you.
Thank you for the hours of entertainment as well.
You are so welcome. So, given that I'm talking to Google, and given that you are, you know, obviously the great minds of our generation, I know this because my son is one of you. I thought it would be really nice to finish with a reading from my next book, which has not come out yet and will not come out until September. And this is a book called Fortunately, the Milk, that was actually, in peculiar ways, inspired by my son, Mike. It's about a dad. It's about a father who gets to go off and do one of the heroic and brave things that fathers get to do, which is to say, go out and get the milk for his children's cereal. And he claims, he takes a long time to get back. And when asked why, he starts to explain, let me tell you in his own words why he takes a while to come back with the milk for their cereal. I bought the milk, said my father, and I did indeed say a brief hello to Mr. Ronson from over the road who was buying a paper. I walked out of the corner shop and heard something odd that seemed to be coming from above me. It was a noise like this. Thump, thump. I looked up and saw a huge silver disc hovering in the air above Marshall Road. Hello, I said to myself, that's not something you see every day. And then something odd happened. That wasn't odd, I asked. Well, something odder, said my father. The odd thing was the beam of light that came out of the disc, a glittery, shimmery beam of light that was visible even in the daylight. And the next thing I knew, I was being sucked up into the disc. Fortunately, I put the milk into my coat pocket. The deck of the disc was metal. It was as big as a playing field, or bigger. We have come to your planet from a world very far away, said the people in the disc. I call them people, but they were a bit green and rather globby, and they looked very grumpy indeed. Now, as a representative of your species, we demand that you give us ownership of the whole planet. We are going to remodel it. I jolly well won't, I said. Then it said, we will bring all your enemies here and have them make you miserable until you agree to sign the planet over to us. I was going to point out to them that I didn't have any enemies when I noticed a large metal door with emergency exit, do not open for any reason, this means you, on it. I opened the door. Don't do that, said a green globby person. You'll let the space-time continuum in. But it was too late. I'd already pushed open the door. I jumped. I was falling. Fortunately, I'd kept tight hold of the milk, so when I splashed into the sea, I didn't lose it. What was that? Said a woman's voice. A big fish? A mermaid? Or was it a spy? I wanted to say that I wasn't any of those things, but my mouth was full of seawater. I felt myself being hauled up onto the deck of a little ship. There were a number of men and a woman on the deck, and they all looked very cross. Who be ye, landlubber? Said the woman, who had a big hat on her head and a parrot on her shoulder. He's a spy, a walrus in a coat, a new kind of mermaid with legs, said the men. What are you doing here? Asked the woman. Well, I said, I just set out to the corner shop for some milk, for my children's breakfast and for my tea, and the next thing I knew, he's lying, Your Majesty. She pulled out her cutlass. You dare lie to the Queen of the Pirates? Fortunately, I'd kept tight hold of the milk, and now I pointed to it. If I did not go to the corner shop to fetch the milk, I asked them, then where did this milk come from? At this, the pirates were completely speechless. Now, I said, if you could let me off somewhere near to my destination, I would be much obliged to you. And where would that happen to be? Said the Queen of the Pirates. On the corner of Marshall Road and Fletcher Lane. I said, my children are waiting for their breakfast. You're on a pirate ship now, my fine bucko, said the Pirate Queen, and you don't get dropped off anywhere. There are only two choices. You can join my pirate crew or refuse to join, and we'll slit your cowardly throat and we'll go to the bottom of the sea where you will feed the fishes. What about walking the plank? I said. Never heard of it, said the pirates. Walking the plank, I said, is what proper pirates do. Look, I'll show you. Do you have a plank anywhere? It took some looking, but we found a plank. And I showed the pirates where to put it. We discussed nailing it down, but the Pirate Queen decided it was safer just to have the two fattest pirates sit on the end of it. Why exactly do you want to walk the plank? Asked the Pirate's Queen. I edged out onto the plank. The blue Caribbean water splashed gently beneath me. Well, I said, I've seen lots of stories with pirates in them, and it seems to me that if I'm going to be rescued... At this, the pirates started to laugh so hard their stomachs wobbled, and the parrot took off into the air in amazement. Rescue? They said, there's no rescue out here. We're in the middle of the sea. Nevertheless, I told them, if you're going to be rescued, it will always be while walking the plank. Which we don't do, said the Pirate Queen. Here, have a Spanish doubloon and come and join us in our piratical adventures. It's the 18th century, she added, and there's always room for a bright, enthusiastic pirate. I caught the doubloon. I almost wish that I could, I told her, but I have children and they need their breakfast. Then you must die. Walk the plank. I edged out to the end of the plank. Sharks were circling. So were piranhas. And this was where I interrupted my dad for the first time. Hang on, I said, piranhas are a freshwater fish. What were they doing in the sea? You're right, said my father. The piranhas were later. Right. So, I was out at the end of the plank, facing certain death, when a rope ladder hit my shoulder and a deep booming voice shouted, quickly, climb up the rope ladder. I needed no more encouragement than this, and I grabbed the rope ladder with both hands. Fortunately, the milk was pushed deep into the pocket of my coat. The pirates hurled insults at me and even discharged pistols, but neither insults nor pistol shot found their targets, and I soon made it to the top of the rope ladder. I'd never been in the basket of a hot air balloon. It was very peaceful up there. The person in the balloon basket said, I hope you don't mind me helping, but it looked like you were having problems down there. I said, you're a stegosaurus.